A very warm welcome to all our viewers from NNI Sports. The Sports Authority of India has introduced a couple of clauses, but the most interesting clause which it has introduced pertains to the next Asian Games to be held in 2026. And I do want to read out that particular clause before we start this discussion. So it says no extra entries. Only athletes, coaches, and support staff cleared and funded by the government will be included. No extra members allowed, even at no cost to the government. I have with me Sundeep Misra, the one and only, who has a perfect opinion on these topics, and he will decode it for you. Sundeep, over to you.
Well, it's perfect, but I don't know how can you really, over a period of since the last Asian Games, how do you kind of understand an athlete who goes through an ups and downs, performances sometimes dip, and to say that only the top six will go? Sometimes I think it's a little bit harsh because usually what happens is competition fit is one thing. You sometimes take a good amount of form into a competition. You are on a rhythm, you are on a good momentum going into competitions. We have seen a lot of athletes who have been top of the list failing in major championships, but there have been athletes who've not been performing for, let's say, 6 months, 8 months for various reasons. When I say performing, I don't mean that they have to keep winning to be in a particular team, but to say that these athletes who are in the top six will only perform, I think is like stretching it a bit. As I say, there are athletes who go to an Asian Games, who go to an Asian Championships, who go to the World Championships, who go to major competitions like the Diamond League, and they do well when they are least expected to do well because the competition brings out the best in them. So I think it's slightly harsh, yeah.
Where the modern athlete is concerned, the element of the coach, as we now know, is very, very critical. Maybe it has always been, but with modern sports, with technology, nutrition, medicine, all coming into play, and the importance of coaches, with Neeraj winning that gold, and after that, how much of a focus on the coach has been. First it was Uwe Horn, then it was Bartonets, then of course you have Zelezny, and the list goes on. And the same applies in the Asian Games to other genres, so wrestling, boxing, where the coach is very, very important. So let's develop that point that when an athlete goes in for a blue chip event, should that person have the freedom of having his or her personal coach?
On the face of it, yes. I think if you look at most countries, when I say most, I mean America, a lot of the top track and field powerhouses in Europe, even Australia, they usually have a quota. When I say quota, if it's a personal coach, the papers and everything is usually filed much before, and then the respective federations, for example, their IOAs or whatever they are, they kind of let them into the team because an accreditation is very necessary for a personal coach to be sitting there. Otherwise, why will somebody take a personal coach? Because outside of the stadium, you can go and meet anyone. But when it's required, and especially I can still understand that sometimes in track and field, you may not need a personal coach in the stands. But when you're doing the throws, when you're at the long jump, when you are at the triple jump, when you're in the javelin, when you're in the high jump, you sometimes need that little extra. And coaching is not always scientific or technical inputs coming in. Scientific, of course, what has been done has been done. What you got to perform there, you got to perform there. But there is an emotional side to coaching, and I think athletes look for that emotion, that if I'm not doing something well, and sometimes I'm not saying you may go out of form, but your rhythm is not happening in a high jump, for example, or in a throw, for example. You need a little bit of emotional lift at that time, and sometimes a coach telling them something extra, because over a period of years, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 1 year, 6 months, whatever time that personal coach has spent, he's understood the psychological side of the athlete. So he understands under stress what he does, and when he's on a momentum, what he does. I think those are issues that I think the Sports Authority of India, the IOA, the AFIs, or whichever those federations are, they should be able to understand that it is the emotional link that is also equally important.
Yet we have some ridiculous instances, unfortunate, I would say, that you were at Tokyo for the World Athletics Championships. We had Sarvesh Kushare in the high jump, coming sixth, if I'm right, in the world. and he had no coach. So who does he turn to for support? Is Murli Sri Sankar's father, who is a coach in the long jump. And you were there. You spoke to Sarvesh Kushare afterwards. You spoke to Murli Sri Shankar also. But essentially, what I want to know from you is that why was Sarvesh Kushare hung there high and dry?
Well, Sarvesh will not agree to the, that he was hung dry out there, because I won't say, like, I'm not going to use the word smart, but he does understand that there are different things that happen in a federation, that, when teams are formed. And there is also this tug of war that happens, not necessarily in the Sarvesh case, tug of war between a national coach and a personal coach. There are a lot of ego issues that happen. National coaches don't like personal coaches. Personal coaches always feel that the national coaches कुछ नहीं करते हैं, उनको पता नहीं है क्या हो रहा है. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's just a play that happens between both, and I think somewhere there is a middle ground that needs to be understood. For Sarvesh, I do believe that what he did there was unbelievable, brilliant to get a sixth position. But at the same time, I think if he had his own man there, and not to take away from Sri Shankar's father, because at the end of the day, he is a coach with a reputation, even though he may be in the long jump. But the links between a high jump and a personal coach in that particular event are very, very different. The equations are different. And here we are not playing around for, like, somebody's going to be jumping 6 inches more, or, 7 inches more. These are fractions out there. And sometimes you just need that to be taken into a podium finish or a top six finish. I think that is exactly what most athletes look for when they ask for a personal coach, is somebody they can open up to, somebody who understands. Because if you are the personal coach of Sarvesh, you're seeing him day in, day out, doing 20, 40, 50, 60, 80 jumps a day, or whatever weekly training regimes that they have. And it clicks. It does click with a lot of coaches that this is what is going wrong there. I think those areas need to be tweaked, and I think Sports Authority of India needs to understand, as I said before, the emotional link is so important between an athlete and a coach, that the moment you break that, you may get a performance, but you will not get an optimum performance from an athlete.
Break it down for us, also for the viewers, with your enormous experience of covering multiple events all over the world over the years. That there are two categories I'm given to understand. One is from Sai's side. One is the paid for category, where that coach and the team, the cost is borne by Sai, and the other is up to the sponsors and all of that. Sai wants to now hack out part two. Why?
The whys are very difficult with federations and associations in India, but I think it is more of something like a process, a system that they want to follow, which actually should be followed. Let's put it that way. That you can't keep tampering, you can't keep tweaking a system every 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, just because somebody else is in the hot seat. What needs to be done is that you have your national coach, no issue. The national coach is one. For example, a chief coach of the track and field team. Now, a chief coach of the track and field team, he's going to look at the sprints, he's going to look at the middle distance, he's going to look at long distance, he's going to look at triple, long jump, throws, everything. Not possible at all. It is beyond any one single person's, circle to kind of be everywhere. He can be there as the person who understands how a team functions. But to do this bit where you have to bring in a process, I think you have to somehow include the national coaches with the personal coaches. But the ego play is something that the SAI can easily step in, call a team process out there, bring in everyone, and try and understand which athlete requires a personal coach. And there should not be a biased decision. What happens is that normally most decisions are biased, which are not in favor of the athlete. An athlete may sometimes ask for a personal coach, if at all. If somebody believes that a personal coach is not required and that athlete is not somebody really high up in the priority list, I think you can take a call. But for priority athletes who have really gone through the process, who have gone rung by rung and reached a particular position in world athletics, in Asian Games athletics, or in the continent, I think you need to take a call for a personal coach, and it is required. It is sometimes necessary for athletes to perform. What are we looking at as a nation? We are looking at an athlete performing. What are we looking at in the Asian Games? We are looking at a bunch of medals, not just one, two, or maybe no medal like a World Championships. So if you need a bunch of medals out there, you need the golds and the silvers and the bronze, then you need to bring all of these factors together. You can't just say, this is what I believe and this is what I think, then you're on the wrong path.
You've repeatedly mentioned, not just today during our chat, but even earlier, that you've been trying to be as understanding as possible about Sai and about AFI and their workings. I grant the fact that as a layperson, I mean, as a fan of Indian sport, we would all love to see that every athlete thrives. But do you see a gray area of functionality or coordination between Sai on one hand and AFI on the other?
There's no gray area, there's no area as such. The question is, are we looking at the country as a whole when it comes to, and I'm talking of track and field. I'm not talking, because there's so many sports in the Asian Games or in the Olympic Games. When you just look at track and field, I think 2 years before the Asian Games or even 3 years before the Asian Games, these decisions need to be taken. You already know who are those athletes who are going to go 2 years from now. You know your priority list of the top 10. You know your priority list of the second top 10, the first top 20. You have all those lists out there. Why is it so difficult to prepare a list of national coaches versus personal coaches 2 or 3 years before? Speak to them much before. Why are we always indulging in this 6 months, 8 months, or a year to go before a major championships? It's not good for the athlete, because at the end of the day, you still got to listen to the athlete, because the athlete is going to perform. Nobody from IOA, nobody from AFI, and nobody from SAI is going to be jumping up and down a high jump or a triple jump or whatever to get you medals. It's the athlete who gets you the medal. Listen to the athletes for a change. You may sometimes make a mistake, and you may put up a hand and say, okay, I did a mistake, and we listen to an athlete and he didn't perform. But largely, athletes will perform.
I have a list which has been given by our research team. I'll run it past Sundeep. So, for the World Athletics Championships, who are the coaches who went? There was the chief coach, Radhakrishnan Nair, who works with AFI. Then you have Murli, long jump coach, who is Murli Sri Sankar's father. Then Ronald Weigel, if I pronounce that right, is the race walking coach. Zelezny is, of course, Neeraj Chopra's celebrated coach. Sergei Makarov, the Russian, who is the javelin coach. Then you have Yuanri Betanzos, triple jump coach. Martin Owens, who is Animesh Kujur's personal coach. And he was there in one of our editions of Ekamra Sports Lit Fest. And Martin Owens had a lot to say about how Animesh Kujur sought him out. And he was kind enough to agree, and they've set up a great rapport. Good for them. But the main point which our team, NNI Sports, is highlighting is this, that the following coaches should have been on that flight to Tokyo. And on that flight, Sundeep was there as a senior editor, but these gentlemen, these people were not there. Who are they? Jitin Thomas, high jump coach. Sarvesh Kushare finished 6th at the World Championships final. He's already gone through it, but we can hit that point. Jitin Thomas is his high jump coach. Basant Bahadur Rana, coach of Savin Sebastian and Ram Bablu. Naval Singh, Sachin Yadav's coach, he was also not there. So, if we are openly saying that these are the coaches who should have been on that flight, Sundeep, do you agree that they should have been?
Yes, they should have been. Because what happens is that if an athlete is not going to perform, and I'm saying this very openly, we ask an athlete to come to a mix zone. Why? Because there needs to be an interaction. This is not something which is like, that this is a demand. This is not a demand. This is something that is a very normal, a very natural interaction that happens. And I'm not going to say it's media versus the athlete. It's just an interaction that should happen. And I do also believe that most coaches should also come up and talk, because it's a championship is over, and then a week later, there's nothing. It's just silence. It's complete radio silence as to why an athlete performed and why an athlete didn't perform. So, if those coaches who have been responsible for a particular athlete, whether it's from the juniors to the seniors, or even in the seniors, if a particular coach is with an athlete for 2 to 3 years, I think an athlete, when he looks into the crowd, when he looks at the coach's zone, he sees a familiar face, he understands the expressions, the emotions that are coming from the coach, and he automatically tweaks it in his mind, and he does and he does go out and try and do something else with his performance. It happens sometimes you might hit a golden patch, you may even, not be there, which is part of the sport. But give them those factors, give them that thing in their own hand to be able to understand and deliver. Don't ask somebody else to be there and then they look and then they try and figure out what is the coach saying. It's very easy for somebody to say that Sarvesh has been performing for so long, so why does he need his personal coach? By that logic, why does he need any coach at all? Then don't even send any coaches with the team. If Neeraj Chopra has been performing months and months and years and diamond leagues and world championships and Olympic games, then why have his coach there? Zelensky ने जो उसको बोल दिया अब वहाँ क्या बोलेगा वो extra? So that logic then holds good for every coach then, for the entire team then only one man should go who's the head of the delegation, and that's it. So then what is the point in having and doing so much of a personal coach rapport and building up a emotional link with the coach? And I keep repeating the emotional link. I think a lot of people do forget coaching is just not about technicalities. It is about emotions also.
Let's talk a bit on the controversies, because I remember this personal coach controversy kicked in massively a couple of years ago. You would know the event. India's celebrated woman TT player Manika Batra had a problem that her personal coach Sanmay Paranjpe wasn't there, and she refused to speak to the official coach who was present at the premier event. Manika Batra, for even if she's having, like they say, a bad hair day, she appears as if she is the world champion. So kudos to her for that attitude. But since she did not have that coach Sundeep, she was absolutely pissed off. There was no other word for it, and it was brilliantly played out on television. In another context, Manu Bhakar, our premier shooter, had a problem earlier with Jaspal Rana, and that whole saga unfolded. Jaspal wore a t-shirt with the names of various people, and he couldn't get along with the shooter's mother, which is a different story. But these two incidents brought to the fore for a lot of people कि ये क्यों हो रहा है कि एक top athlete है who cannot get her own personal coach in an important event, and this is the disaster that followed. Because I remember when that shooting, that event happened, our shooters just fell by the wayside. Manu Bhakar underperformed, and then a lot of changes came in. So I'm giving this preamble for the viewers precisely for the fact for you to come in and analyze this for us.
But on the same, but if you really give an example, then Malong also went there from China. I mean, the celebrated TD player, and he had asked for his personal coach, which was the files had already been sent 2 years back. People who follow Olympic sport and who follow table tennis would understand and know that the Chinese government or the Chinese Federation, whichever was responsible, they cleared his personal coach at the government's expense to go there. They understood the importance of why he was wanting a personal coach. Along with, he didn't say that, I'm not going to interact with the national coach, but a major interaction always happens. In Tokyo, the Belgian heptathlete Nafi Thiam, if I'm correct, triple gold medalist at the Olympics, consecutive, was not allowed to have her therapist, physiotherapist, so something like that. She, I think after the second day event or in the middle of those events, she walked off because she said she couldn't perform. And just imagine, I mean, they refused to give her her personal physiotherapist, even though she was 3 times consecutive gold medalist. In India, if you're a 3-time gold medalist or a 2-time gold medalist, they'll let you go with 6 personal coaches, But of course, I may be, overemphasizing on the 6 personal coaches. But the part, I think, and Thiam has recently tweeted also that a lot of people may think a lot of things, but what I wanted for a certain reason. So I think the personal coach bit, I think even for any federation out there, especially for Sports Authority of India, I think it is absolutely necessary for an entire team to really think about this. This cannot be just done by people who are in administrative posts, who don't have an understanding of athlete mindsets, coach mindsets, and what performance is required at a particular time in a particular month when you are especially peaking for an event. I think the moment the administration guys understand that, I think athletics will probably bloom.
Since India, via our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, has been talking about pitching for the 2036 Olympics, there is a lot of attention on how that pitch will happen, how that bid will happen, if it happens at all. But there is this buzz in the air. So, against that backdrop, uh, there is this constant criticism now of people from the federation who pile on to such events, wives, daughters of certain officials who are seen in important events, who have no role to play or maybe minor roles to play, and they hang around there. And this has been discussed and now discussed very openly. There is also a lot of public pushback on social media कि ये लोग कर क्या रहे हैं, क्यों इनको भेजा जा रहा है, इनका पैसा तो टैक्स पेयर दे रहा है, यानी हम दे रहे हैं. तो अगर हम कोई आपसे जानना चाहें तो वो हमारा हक बनता है. इट इज आवर राइट टू नो. नो वन इज डूइंग मी अ फेवर बाय ट्राइंग टू से दैट नो नो नो, डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट, वील टेक केयर. Would you like to comment on this?
You're pressing all the wrong buttons today, but
Okay, the last one.
but I mean, this has been happening 60, 64. You look at the hockey team that went in 60. You look at the hockey team that went in 64 to Tokyo. You know, you'll see a lot of faces who shouldn't have been part of the hockey setup at that time. So it's nothing new. The issue is that whoever gets an accreditation needs to be uh, suitable, needs to be honoring that accreditation. You know, it's not a small thing to get an accredit to go to an Asian Games or an Olympic Games. I think if Sai is insistent on top 6 performances, if Sai is insistent that personal coaches will not go, then Sai or whoever it is, I'm not just blocking or putting this whole thing on Sai, then it just means one thing. Then are you assuring everybody that the rest of the crowd that normally goes as guests or whatever, then they are not going? Then it's perfect. Then, as I said, if there is a process and a system, then you follow it. Then you
Okay.
completely follow it, so that the fallout can only then fall on you also. Then you are responsible, you are accountable.
And let's also, the last point, we won't trouble you much more than this. The last point from Sai is, it seems like what they're trying to do, there is quite a bit of good here. I'll just race through some of the main subheadings, what they are trying to do. Like, for example, before the Asian Games, they want clear selection rules. Sandeep has already explained that. Benchmarks for selection, which obviously should be there, and they are tightening the screws. Team events criteria, relaxation clause, and the last one is no extra entries, which again we have discussed. But out of these five, Sandeep, they all seem pretty relevant, and the intent is good.
Yeah, but the question is that can they follow up on this? That is the main thing. Can it be done very professionally so that when the team then goes off to the Asian Games, then you know that the coach is perfect, the personal coach rule has been implemented, and that nobody is going to take a personal coach. Then the coaches who are there for every event or with the team are the ones who are number one professionally, should be with the team, and they are not hangers on or whatever. And as we had said, then nobody else who is not part of the delegation, who is not part of the team, should not be in that list completely. Then you're in the clear. Then you're accountable for it.
Okay, Sandeep, thanks very much for your time. And for our viewers, watch this show very, very closely. I would advise you to watch it repeatedly on YouTube and on other social media handles. On NNI Sports, you will understand a lot. वो एक चीज़ में एक बार देखने से आपको सारी चीज़ें नहीं समझ में आएंगी. मज़ा आएगा आपको. और इसमें जैसे कहते हैं ना, दाल बेकार होता है जब तक उसमें तड़का ना पड़े. तो थोड़ा मिर्च मसाला डालना तो ज़रूरी होता है. Goodbye, boss. We'll be back again pretty soon.